How could she do this to me? How could she do this to our family? Those were my immediate thoughts when I awoke the next morning in a hungover haze. I'm Jonathan Fremont, and until last night, I thought my wife Susan Fremont was my loving wife, my true love. Turns out, she is a loving wife, at least in practice, only with her lover, meaning, not me. She said she's been cheating on me for about a year now, and she wants me to accept it. Yeah, no, not going to happen. I fought to rein in my anger and reviewed what she had said last night. She loved him, but she loved me too. She was going to spend more time with him overnight, and I would have no say in it. She said he's a divorced lawyer, and she was just helping him. She said he was her divorce lawyer. If I wouldn't play ball with her, I've watched enough courtroom dramas on TV to know that's a huge conflict of interest and would get him disbarred. I smiled, but then as quickly as the smile happened, it disappeared. I still didn't know who the guy was, and anything short of torturing Susan wouldn't get the information out of her. I briefly entertained the thought of torturing the cheating 304, but then I thought about my kids again. She's their mother. I can't do that to her. I reviewed everything I knew about the situation again. Yeah, if I didn't play by her rules, I was going to pay, so she and her lover boy could live together on my dime. Screw it. I had a friend who had gone through a divorce, and one night at the bar, he had told us how he'd gotten through it. He'd taken everything out of his accounts and opened new ones, leaving his cheating wife with nothing to hire a lawyer. She'd gotten one to take the case pro bono, but that wasn't a good move on her part. She lost big time to my buddy's sharp lawyer. She got half since this is a no-fault state, but she didn't get alimony at all. The big difference was that he didn't have kids. I do. That means I would have to pay child support at the very least. Now, as far as I knew, she wasn't bringing him to the house, which meant she was going to his place. I decided to check something, though, and called my mother-in-law. Hi Jonathan, what's going on? Did you want to talk to the kids? My mother-in-law asked, a sweet lady. I wondered if she knew that her daughter was cheating. Probably not. Oh, nothing much. I was wondering about something, though. How many days a week do you usually watch the Rugrats? I asked. 3 or 4 times a week, usually from 8 to 5, while Susan volunteers at the homeless shelter and food bank, she replied. Susan was lying to her own parents. Thanks, Mom, I said. Just wanted to know so I could surprise her next week. SHH, don't tell her, okay? She chuckled. Oh, don't worry, Mom's the word, I said with false cheer. She bought it. Thanks, Mom. I'll talk to you later. Bye, have a great day, I ended the call. I went and looked in the mirror. I wasn't going bald that badly. I still had more hair than Christopher Maloney. It had started to recede, but it wasn't too bad yet. I shaved, then combed my hair, and sure enough, I did have more than Detective Stabler on SVU. Now, the beer gut would have to go. As much as she said that to hurt me the night before, she was right about that. How could I have let myself go like this? All that overtime, working 60 hours a week to bring home the bacon for my great kids and my cheating wife, the kids I loved, the wife not so much anymore. Yeah, I wasn't quite as vulnerable as she would have me believe. First things first, I called and canceled all our joint credit cards and ordered new ones in my name only. Then I called my branch manager and had him take everything from our joint savings and checking and put it into a checking account in my name only. I also canceled automatic bill payments. It's called self-defense, ladies and gentlemen. My wife had such contempt and disrespect for me that she would lie through her teeth about me being defenseless against her divorce argument. She had declared war. Her mistake. But then, her lawyer buddy had advised her on what to say. Lawyers are like cops, they will try strong-arm and scare tactics to keep average people from fighting back. The cops do it when they know you would have a valid complaint against them. The lawyers did it so they could get an out-of-court settlement. Yeah, they both underestimated me. I might be just a diesel mechanic, but that doesn't mean I'm stupid. With 4 years in Army CID, I could have been a cop or a private eye, but I really loved working on engines, and diesel engines were my specialty. Even as a shade tree mechanic, now that I was a certified diesel mechanic, I was making decent money and loads of overtime at time and a half. I dressed in sweats and went for a jog to think, okay, I also did it for some exercise to try to get rid of this beer gut. After my jog, I decided to call my boss and let him know that I was going to take a couple of weeks of vacation time to work through a family crisis. He gave his okay on that, and then it was time to fine-tune my plan of action. It was going to be intense, with a lot of blood, that much I knew right away. Hell, there was a good chance I could end up in jail after all the dust had settled. I wanted to avoid that, of course. Having worked CID, there were ways I knew to pull it off, but it would still be tricky. It was time to go shopping. I showered, changed into clean clothes, and hit the town. Winter was coming, so I grabbed some soft, supple gloves, a black turtleneck, and a ski mask with no mouth hole. I also got some Oakley shades with a matte gray finish on the front and matte black frames. Gotta love Walmart. Yes, I was going to have a lot of fun once I knew who the jerk really was. Then, I hit our local spy shop and grabbed some voice-activated recorders and a GPS system with extended life batteries. I debated on cameras, but those wouldn't be needed yet. I also bought a gym bag for my new clothes and a pair of matte black steel-toed work boots. That wasn't such a stretch since my old work boots were pretty worn out. That's fine, though, the new boots would be replacements for the old ones. I found a sporting goods store and bought an aluminum baseball bat and a large gym bag. I decided to also buy a sports girdle for my gut, just in case. I didn't want the guy to be able to ID me because of my gut, that was for sure. I made sure to pay cash for everything. I did not want to leave a paper trail from a credit card that could be traced back to me. Then came the hard part, playing the whipped hubby when my cheating witch of a wife got home, whenever she decided to get home, that is. I wouldn't capitulate right away, of course. Susan knows me, and she knows how bullheaded I am. I stayed out all day until what would have been quitting time. I didn't want her to think anything was up yet. I went into the house, and she wasn't even home yet. Well, screw it. I tried her cell phone, but it was turned off and went straight to voicemail. I left her a message that it was urgent and she needed to call me immediately when she was able. I said the time and date and told her that she needed to call me ASAP. It was time to mess with her head a little bit. She called 2 hours later, and the kids were still at their grandparents' place. "Jonathan, what's going on?" she asked in a worried tone. I decided to sound a bit broken up. "Come home, Susan. It's about the kids. Please, just come straight home," I sobbed for effect, then hung up. Susan came straight home and burst into the room from the garage less than 10 minutes after I'd called her. She saw how pale I looked. "What's going on, honey?" "Where are the children?" she asked, her eyes full of fear. "What do you care?" I snapped. "You were too busy with your lover to worry that your children could have been hurt or dying." My voice dripped with venom, and my eyes were full of hatred. Oh, the marriage was over, but I was going to mess with her head something fierce before it was all over. 2 hours, Susan. Your phone was off for 2 hours after I got home from work and called you. What if the children had been hurt? What then? Is he that much more important to you than your own children? Susan collapsed on the couch in the living room and held her face in her hands, sobbing pitifully. What if instead of the children, I had been killed? Would you care as much, Susan? I asked in a lower tone of voice. Would you care at all, or just call your parents to tell them to keep the kids longer so you could have even more time with your boy toy? She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying but still defiant. It's not like that, Jonathan. You know it's not like that, she sobbed. I can't believe you would do that to me. I can't believe you would use your own children as weapons against me. I slowly shook my head. I didn't do this to you, Susan. You did it to yourself when you took up with your little boyfriend. I miss my wife, and the kids miss their mommy, I said, still keeping my voice low and even. They love their grandparents, but they love you more. This caused her to pale a bit. She knew deep down that I was right, but her stubborn pride would no more allow her to admit it than it would allow her to ever admit I was right about something. Well, since they're fine, I'm going back after I shower, she sneered at me. Just remember, you try to divorce me, I will leave you ruined and broken. There's a God, I thought as she wandered back towards our bedroom to shower in the master bath. I acted quickly, grabbing the GPS and one of the voice-activated recorders and heading out to her car. I planted the recorder under her seat and the GPS under the passenger seat. I had the receivers for both on me so I could know where she went and what she was saying, either on the phone or talking to herself. The signal range was a good 10 miles. She would have to be all the way on the other side for me to lose the signal. And from when she called until she showed up, he did not live all the way on the other side of town. Oh, that jerk's day of reckoning was coming, and it was coming very soon. Once the devices were planted and my receivers were tested, I pocketed the voice receiver and placed the GPS receiver in my Ford F-250 diesel. I love that old truck. I was inside, sitting with my head in my hands as Susan came out, dressed to kill. I looked up at her. "Susan, I'm begging you, please don't do this to me. Don't do this to your family," I pleaded. Her expression softened. "I'm sorry that you can't understand, honey. I really do love you, but he needs me," she said apologetically, giving me a weak smile. "No, Susan. If you were sorry, you wouldn't go. You would still be a faithful wife instead of sleeping with a man who is not your husband," I said firmly. "You have to understand, honey. I have to do this. He needs me," she repeated, her voice pleading. "Your family needs you, Susan," I emphasized. "Or do you no longer care about me and our children? The 3 children who were made from our love for each other. Remember them? They're the best of both of us, Susan. We made them together. Honey, I love you and our children, but he needs me right now. I promise that tomorrow, I'm all yours," she smiled, as if that would make it all better. Now was the time to play the part one had been psyching myself down for. "Okay, but I don't like this," I shook my head in resignation with a sigh of defeat. The look of triumph that came to her face was quickly replaced by a condescending smile. "Don't worry, honey. I love you, and I will always be yours. This is just temporary," she said. "Okay, but like I said, it will be a long time coming before I'm okay with you doing this, Susan," I shook my head again as she walked towards the garage. "This is just temporary," I repeated to myself, reassuringly. "Temporary until lover boy has been dealt with. Then let's see how much she likes him when I'm done." As soon as she left, I went and grabbed the aluminum baseball bat, my old Bowie knife, and my blowtorch. I grinned eagerly as I climbed into the cab of my Ford and turned on the GPS and voice receivers. She had the radio on, and I could hear her humming a happy tune along with the radio. I slipped the torch, knife, and bat into the gym bag. Giving her a 5-minute head start, I saw by the GPS that she was only a few miles away. So, I gunned my truck to life and headed over there. I pulled up to the house where she had just parked her car in his garage. She even had a garage door opener for his place. Jesus, she might as well be married to him instead of me. I felt my rage rising again but took some deep breaths to keep it in check. I wanted to do nothing more than to bust in there and beat the crap out of him, and her too if she got in the way. At least I got his license plate number and jotted it down quickly. I always carry a pen and a small notebook with me, an old habit from my time in Army CID. I also jotted down his address. No, this would take some proper planning. I made sure that my gear was squared away. I got in the back of the cab and changed into my redneck ninja gear, as I came to think of it. I put on the girdle so my gut wasn't showing, pulled on the gloves to avoid leaving any fingerprints, and the sweater over that. I put on the black jeans and pulled the ski mask over my face. Tonight would just be recon, tomorrow would be a different matter. I then pulled around to the mouth of the alleyway behind the houses. I stopped a few houses down from Lover Boys and slipped out quietly. I left the bat inside the cab and went silently through his alley gate. No problem so far. I kept my eyes open, scanning for any alarm systems, none so far. I went low and ran to the closest window. There was light from inside, and it was damn near pitch black outside. That would give me an advantage too. I stopped just below the window and peeked over the sill. What I saw made my blood boil. The guy was sitting there, stroking himself while my wife gave him a little striptease. I was damn glad now that I hadn't brought the bat with me. I would have busted in the window and then busted his head open with my impression of Mark McGuire. I took several deep breaths to calm myself, listening intently for any clues as to who he was. "That's it, baby. I love it when you dance for me. You like that, honey? Do you like it when I strip like a little 304 for you?" I really had to maintain my self-control now. I was tempted to go back to my truck and get my bat anyway. "I love it. You are so hot, Susan," he exclaimed in a tone of voice that said he was having no guilt or hard times to get through. I knew she was lying through her teeth. "So are you, Jim," she giggled. "Jim, huh? Well, Jim, I think very soon you're going to wish you had never even heard of Susan Fremont." I had heard enough. I left before I did anything stupid. I didn't want Susan there when I finally had it out with that asshole. I wouldn't physically harm her, but her boy Toy, on the other hand, was fair game. He had set out to seduce my wife, knowing she was married. He had willfully and knowingly cuckolded me. He had somehow subverted Susan's iron will. He was dangerous, and I was going to make damn sure he never did it to anyone else's wife. Once I was back in the cab, I got out of the sweater, black jeans, and ski mask with Oakley shades. In a surprisingly comfortable sports girdle that made my beer gut disappear, I put on my normal blue jeans, t-shirt, and boots. I started my truck and hauled out of there. Jim, okay, now I had a first name and I could look up his last name in the morning. I walked into my house and decided to get my lockpicks from my nightstand. I had kept them since my time in CID, and somehow I knew they would come in handy someday. I called my mom and asked if she would like the kids to stay overnight, and she said sure. She missed her grandkids, so I promised to bring them by in the morning for her to watch. I then called Susan's folks to let them know that I would pick up the kids later in the morning. And while they loved their grandchildren, they were relieved that I would be picking them up and taking them to my mom's place. I packed a suitcase with some of my clothes and boxers and shoved it in my closet. It was getting close to the endgame now. She was going to realize just how much she had lost within the next 72 hours. I got to bed early and awoke early the next morning after another morning jog and an actually healthy breakfast. Today, I got on my old laptop and looked up Jim's address and license plate number. Mr. James Robert Stevens was his name. He was indeed a divorce attorney, and he had also really lost his wife in an accident several years back. So they weren't lying about that. He had, however, used it to seduce my wife. The scumbag was using his personal tragedy to steal another man's wife, my wife. Typical asshole. The news of his loss actually made me feel even better for what I had planned for his holiness. He was going to know true pain, not the pain of loss that he had suffered before, but the pain that comes with the consequences of stealing another man's wife. I went to work as usual, still on my sabbatical, and parked in the parking lot. Then I jogged to the bank and picked up my new ATM card and credit cards. Once those were in hand, I pulled $300 out of the ATM and rented a car from the Hertz rental place down the street from the bank. The car I rented was a nondescript sedan, and with my gym bag transferred from the truck to the car, I parked down the street from Loverboy's house. I then used my cell to call Susan. Surprisingly, she picked up after the first ring. "Jonathan, what's going on? Aren't you at work?" "Yeah, just on a short break right now," I lied. "I was wondering how long you were going to let the kids stay at your grandparents' house until Monday?" "Why?" she asked. "Well, then you won't mind if my mom watches them for a while." "There are grandkids too, and she misses them," I said in a reasonable tone. I was getting better and better at hiding my resentment. "Okay, I have no problem with that," she said nonchalantly. The fact that she was giving in that fast was different and worried me a little. "Sounds good. I'll have Mom pick them up shortly," I lied again. "Can I expect some of your loving at home tonight when I get off work?" I asked in a hopeful tone. There was a long silence before she spoke again, and I realized she had muted her cell's microphone. "I guess so. It's only fair, after all." "I told you that I was all yours tonight," she said in her even tone, indicating she really didn't want to. Well, soon she wouldn't have a choice, I thought. Her mood and tone lightened somewhat. "Does this mean that you're actually seeing things my way?" I had to swallow my bile before answering with another convincing lie. "Let's just say I'm leaning that way, but I do want equal time with you, if that's not too much to ask." "Oh, honey, I'm so happy that you're thinking clearly now," she exclaimed. Oh, she had no idea how clearly I was thinking. "Let's not jump the gun now, baby," I replied, still playing the reluctant participant. "We still need to talk tonight when you get home, but I'm going to want you for the whole weekend. I have something special planned for us." "That sounds good," she said, her tone quite a bit lighter now that she thought I was going to go along with her. "Well, if you can pull away from him early, I want you showered and ready for me when I get home from work. I'm going to take off a bit early tonight so I can get home to you." "I've missed you, baby," I sounded convincing even to myself, and that made me want to hurl. However, the last couple of days of jogging, eating right, and not drinking had helped my stamina quite a bit. I think she would definitely be pleased with me tonight. My beer gut was definitely less than it had been just a few days earlier. "Honey, I always shower and douche after I've been with him. I wouldn't disrespect you so much as to make you have sloppy seconds," she laughed, and I knew she was lying about that too. "Well, I'm going to go down on you tonight, baby. I want you to taste good and fresh for me," I laughed too. "Don't worry, honey, I will," she said. "I'll see you tonight." She ended the call, and I put my cell phone back in my pocket. I changed quickly in the back seat of the sedan, and once again I was the redneck ninja, only without my ski mask and shades on yet. I slumped down in the car to wait. I was parked the opposite direction than she would go home, but I couldn't be too careful. Susan isn't stupid, at least as far as that goes. She was stupid to think that I would just roll over for her, however. I started the car and pulled into the driveway of the abandoned house a few doors down and across the street from Jim the asshole's place. I maneuvered the mirror so I could easily see his driveway and garage and slumped down in the seat to wait. I was prepared to wait for hours if necessary. Susan surprised me when she left after only a few hours. She texted me and said she was leaving now and would be home clean and fresh and waiting for me. I smiled grimly, then backed out of the driveway and followed her at a safe distance. I wanted to make damn sure she wasn't lying to me. Sure enough, she pulled into our driveway 10 minutes later, and I just drove on by and back to his place. I parked in the alley behind the houses again and slipped in through his back gate as I had done the previous night. Only this time, I had my bat on me, and it was going to get a workout. I made sure my ski mask and shades were on and decided that it was indeed time. I looked in his bedroom window, and the lover boy was asleep. I smiled grimly, then tried the back door. It was unlocked, so I didn't even need to pick the lock. What an arrogant asshole. Fine by me. Now, some of my favorite movies are the Dark Knight trilogy, starring Christian Bale, Michael Caine, and a bunch of other great actors. One of the parts one liked the most was how he would change his voice as Batman. I was planning to do the same. I had my full redneck ninja thing going on now, and when I walked into his bedroom, he was still out like a light. Apparently, he had spent all night having sex with my wife. Well, that was going to end now. I dropped the gym bag, took the bat out, cleared my throat loudly, and he opened his eyes blearily at first. Then he saw the bat in my hands, and he freaked out. I brought the bat down on his knee first, shattering his kneecap. His mobility was now greatly compromised. He screamed, and I brought the bat down again, shattering his other kneecap. His mobility was now nil. I smiled under my mask. I lowered my voice to a growl. "How does it feel, lover boy? Jonathan is a friend of mine, and he even told me not to do anything to you if I found out who you were. Unfortunately for you, I have my own sense of justice." I punctuated this with a swing to his balls and heard bones crack as his pelvis broke. "Please, don't kill me," he screamed through the pain. I'll do anything you want. I have money, I can pay you." He cried tears of pain. "I don't want your money," I growled back. "I want you to never so much as think about Susan Fremont again. If you do, I will return, and you will not be so lucky next time. This time was just a warning. If you report this to the police and Jonathan gets in trouble, I will return, and I will kill you. You've already ruined his marriage." I punctuated that with another swift swing to his balls. From what I'd seen the night before, he wasn't even as well hung as I was. He was in shape though, shape I would be in soon, but by then he wouldn't be able to compete. I swung the bat once more, breaking his left arm just below the shoulder. I found his cell phone and bashed it with the bat, then bashed both of his landline telephones. I did not want him to call Susan or anyone else for that matter. I walked out back and slipped out the gate and into the sedan. I changed again, then drove to a Quickie Mart across town where I dumped the bat. I put gas in the gas and in the trunk of the sedan, then drove out of town a ways and torched the rest of the gym bag. Once that was done, I wiped my fingerprints from the torch and threw it on the fire. It was a shame to burn those Oakley shades since they were pretty expensive, but that was okay. They were well worth the money I'd spent. Then, I went to a divorce attorney of my own and had her draw papers against Susan. I was suing for full custody of the kids and 75% of everything. I would pay her no alimony, nor would I ask her for child support as long as she played ball. I would not tell her folks the real reason we were getting a divorce. I told my attorney that I would have an admission of her affair recorded very soon. Then I drove back to the rental place and turned in the car. I thanked him, then jogged back to the diesel shop and went inside. I told my boss that I could work the rest of the shift but needed to leave early to meet Susan. I would still need a few days off coming up, and he was okay with that. Once I was done with the work in the shop, I decided to buy a prepaid cell phone on the way home. I activated it, called 911, and in my growling voice told them what had happened to Mr. James Robert Stevens, giving them his address. I then tossed the phone out the window and into the canal that ran alongside the road. No, I didn't want him to die, I just wanted him to feel the pain I had felt. But for the rest of his days, he had sex with my wife, so I had messed up his life. It was a fair trade, I thought. I pulled the voice recorder out of my pocket and turned it on. The following conversation with my wife is not to be taken at face value on my part. I do not approve of her affair now or ever, I said into the recorder. I then switched it off and replaced it in my pocket. I pulled into the garage and, before going inside, I removed the GPS and voice-activated recorders from Susan's car. I threw them in my truck, and that was that. I went inside and reactivated my pocket recorder before coming up behind Susan and putting my arms around her waist. "That smells good, baby," I said, kissing the side of her neck. She was cooking some steaks on the stove and already had mashed potatoes and green beans made. "Thanks, honey. I'm so glad that you're more accepting of the situation now," she said, then turned her face up to kiss my lips. "About that, baby," I said, keeping the tone light as if I was over her threats, "would you really have divorced me if I didn't go along with it? I wouldn't want to, but I would have in a heartbeat if you tried to deny me my lover. I'm sorry, honey. I wish it could have been different. I didn't want to threaten you, please believe that I do love you," she said. "You know, would you really have taken my kids and not let me see them, though? That would be kind of cruel, wouldn't it?" I once again kept my tone light, as if I was accepting her demands. Now she sighed. "Yes, I would have. It was at his urging that I make it as painful for you as possible if you wanted a divorce. I'm so sorry, honey. I never meant it to sound like that. Well, at least I have you for the weekend and Mom has the kids until Monday. I'm taking Monday off, if you can find it in your heart to be with me that day too, okay? But Tuesday night, I have to meet him again, and I will be with him until Wednesday morning. Then I will be home to take care of our children. Wow, what a great mother. Not. I have to ask one more time, is there nothing I can do to get you to stop seeing him?" I asked in a defeated tone. She sighed again and kept her voice soft and condescending. "I'm sorry, honey. I have to see this through. Don't worry, though. I will still make time for you and the kids whenever possible." Oh hell, this was pure gold for getting her declared as an unfit mother. But tonight, she was mine. My lawyer had said that she would have the papers ready by Monday, and I was going to have her served either here or at the hospital if she found out about Loverboy before then. All I had to do was make the call on Monday morning. Dinner was fantastic. I would miss her cooking. After dinner, I showered and took her in my arms. I made love to her that night, did her hard and fast, something we hadn't done in a very long time. She climaxed over and over thanks to my improved stamina and lack of alcohol. I did her good. I did her deep. She was cross-eyed after some of the most intense climaxes she'd ever had. So, I wasn't good in bed, was I? Well, now I was going to show her just how good I could be. I popped a Viagra and started again. But that wasn't all. I marked her. I gave her several hickeys on her breasts, neck, and down on her stomach and inner thighs too. I was reclaiming her, and she was loving every second of it. It was only after we were done and she went to the bathroom that she screamed in shock at the marks I had left on her. She came storming back into the bedroom where I was laying with a serene smile on my face. How can I possibly see him now? He doesn't want me marked, she shouted, her face an incredulous mask. Well, you're my wife, and I want you marked as mine. If he doesn't like it, that's not my problem, I shrugged. You never said not to, and you sure enjoyed it while I was doing it to you. That actually shut her up. Her face softened as she sat on the bed and took my hand. Jonathan, that was the best we've ever had, even better than with him. Wow, I knew she wasn't just stroking my ego now. She had climaxed more times in the last 4 hours than she ever had before. I'm sure I could feel the difference from when she used to fake them for my benefit. Okay, so I wasn't that good in bed before, but now I had some motivation to make it as good for her as I could make it. It seemed to have worked. Susan, I just pray it's enough to get you to stop seeing him. I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you. All I ask is that you try to see my point of view here. You've been with this guy for over a year now, and I just want my wife back, I said, my eyes pleading with her. Here it was, in-game, I had become damn good at hiding my emotions. But I had sex with her with anger instead of tenderness, hatred instead of love. But damn it, I deserved an Emmy, a Golden Globe, and an Oscar for putting up with her. Oh, honey, I'm still your wife. I love you so much. Just a few more months and this thing will have run its course. Then I will be all yours again, she smiled happily at me. It wasn't condescending like it had been. She had been prepared before, just in case I decided to divorce her. Now she would get blindsided good. The next day, she was like the Susan I had married again. She cooked, cleaned the house, and actually initiated sex with me that night. I told her that I had taken Saturday off, and Monday too, so we could be together more. She was actually having fun with me. I admit, I was having fun with her too. But now that I had seen her true colors, I wasn't going to be drawn in again by her facade. That night, I renewed the marks I'd made on her Friday night, and she didn't even protest afterward. It wasn't until Monday that hit the fan. I pleaded with her one last time not to go back to him. Instead, she grabbed her cell phone and took it into the living room. I told her that I was going to pick up the kids, and she said that was fine. I went and picked up my boy and 2 girls from Mom's house, and she thanked me for letting them stay with her. On the way home, we stopped at Burger King and I bought them lunch. They loved it. Sure, it's not McDonald's, but oh well, the food tastes a lot better than Mickey D's. We were just getting ready to leave when my cell phone rang with Susan's ringtone. Hey babe, miss me already? I said with a chuckle into the phone. I took the kids to BK for some lunch and we're on the way home now. Jonathan, what is the meaning of this? She screamed. Oh, did I fail to mention that she had been served while I was picking my kids up? Oh, you must have gotten the papers, I said. Sorry, baby, we can talk about it when we get home, okay? We have something to talk about. I ended the call before she could retort and turn my phone off. I pulled into the garage and took the kids inside. They were hanging all over me, and Susan, in spite of the divorce papers, was actually happy to see them. They ran to their mommy and asked her where she had been. She made up the usual lie that she was volunteering a lot, then actually told the truth when she said that we had a special mommy and daddy only weekend. I told them that they should go play in their rooms, as mommy and I needed to talk. Once they were out of sight, I took Susan into the basement. Okay, now the kids won't hear us, I said. Susan, I'm going to divorce you. I'm sorry, but I can't take this anymore. I have asked you time and time again not to continue this affair, and now I have your own admission of the affair on tape. I will be sending that tape to my attorney, and she will submit it into evidence. As you can see from the divorce papers, I am suing for full custody, and the fact that you have been neglecting your family will come out at the trial. You also admitted that your lover was more important to you than your children. You will most likely be deemed an unfit mother thanks to your affair with whoever he is. If he's acting as your attorney, I'm pretty sure that he will be disbarred. According to my own attorney, it's a severe breach of ethics for a lawyer to sleep with his or her clients, especially in the case of divorce. She was stunned, her mouth hung open as she struggled to find the words. But I thought you were okay with it now, she exclaimed incredulously. Susan, I realize now that I never knew you. I also realize now that you never knew me. I did everything I could over the years to make you happy. I bought you this house, I bought you your car, I bought you a lot of your jewelry. I spent more than we could really afford, but I made up for it with the overtime. Everything I did was to make your life and our kids' lives better. I'm sorry now that I couldn't do that and show you all the affection and love that I should have. I really did love you, Susan. Unfortunately, your affair killed that love that I have for you. I never said I was okay with it, you know. I gave you one final chance this morning to give him up completely. I begged you to do it. If you had, I wouldn't have had you served this morning. Instead, you called him this morning before I went and picked the kids up. I know you were. I'm sorry for this, Susan. I shook my head. Truly, I was lying through my teeth. Of course, I didn't want her to know that I had been plotting this all along. In the divorce decree, I offered her generous visitation with the kids, either under my supervision, or Mom's, or Grandpa's supervision. The next part would be difficult, but I had to inform Mom and Grandpa of the impending divorce. I called Mom first and let her know that I would be moving out and had filed for divorce from Susan. I explained the entire situation and told her that I had recorded her admission of the affair and how she put her lover before her husband and children. Mom agreed to be my babysitter while I was at work each day. I gathered the children together with Susan, and I explained to them that Mommy and I wouldn't be living together anymore but would always be there for them. I told them that we would be moving in with Grandma, and they were happy about that. Mom had a few rooms at her house since Dad died, and we would be staying there with her. We got packed up fairly quickly, and I told Susan that she would always be welcome at Mom's house with us, as long as she didn't bring her boyfriend with her. She looked utterly defeated. It was 2 days later that she discovered that old Jimmy boy was in the hospital. I was back at work when she called. Hey Susan, what's up? I asked. You son of a, she screamed into my ear. You nearly killed him. Whoa there, what are you talking about? I snapped back. Yeah, my performance was worth multiple awards. I had confusion down pat, you know. Who? She screamed. You nearly killed Jim. He's never going to be the same again. She was crying now. Who's Jim? I asked calmly. Susan, you aren't making any sense. You didn't try to kill him? She asked incredulously. Kill who? I asked in an exasperated tone. I don't know any Jim, except for Jim Barnes, and he's standing right next to me right now. Jim Barnes was one of my work and drinking buddies. I had filled him in on what was going on, and he had just grinned evilly when I told him about the lawyer-lover boy and what I'd done to him. Jim was now trying mightily not to laugh as he overheard my side of the conversation. Jim was the guy I told you about before, whose wife cheated on him and their divorce had been ugly. Oh my God, she exclaimed as she realized that I wasn't going to admit it and that she couldn't prove that I did it. Susan, is some guy named Jim your boyfriend? I asked calmly. If he's almost dead, it couldn't be Jim here. The only thing likely to kill Jim here is a heart attack. I grinned at Jim, who couldn't hold his laughter anymore and ran into the office. Well, he said he was attacked, but he didn't know who did it, Susan admitted between sobs. He had his balls crushed. Oh my God, I acted honestly. If he was the man who stole you from me, then I can't say that I'm sorry to hear that, Susan. God's honest truth, I didn't have anything to do with what happened to him, but I would love to buy whoever did it a beer. Did you ever think that he'd seduce someone else's wife too? You couldn't be with him all the time, you know? The seeds of doubt had been sown, I smiled. You don't think he would? She started, but I interrupted. Why not? I asked. You said yourself that he was depressed because his wife died. He used that to seduce you, Susan. No, it wasn't. She stopped, then thought about it. She took a while to think of everything that had happened in their affair. Oh my God, you're right, she shrieked. The whole and the suddenly the heavenly chorus declared through Susan's voice that I was right. She who never admitted that I was right had now done so. Susan, mark this day on the calendar for me, the day you actually admitted that I was right about something. I laughed out loud. Yeah, she didn't like that. In spite of the fact that she didn't like it, she didn't fight me on the divorce. Mom testified that she could provide babysitting services for my children while I was at work, and the judge took everything into account, including the pattern of behavior over the past year that Susan had been having the affair with Jim Stevens. While she had left the kids with responsible adults, she had done so in order to carry on her affair in secret. The judge didn't quite declare her unfit but put me as primary custodian. He declared Susan as secondary, but only on the stipulation that she not bring her lovers around the children. I wasn't thrilled with that, but I was satisfied. Hell, before she took up with Jim the asshole, Susan was a great mother. Now she would have a chance to be a great mother again. Then the judge told me that I would only have to pay child support and only for the time they spent with Susan. Susan was ordered to get a job. In college, she had majored in accounting, so she could get a job easily. The house was sold, and we split it 50-50ths. The joint accounts, which I had absconded with at the beginning, were split 75/25 in my favor. Yes, when Susan tried to complain, the judge looked at her and said, "Mrs. Fremont, do I need to remind you that you very nearly lost all custody of your children due to your own selfishness? Now get a job." The same judge handled my alienation of affection lawsuit against James Robert Stevens. He actually took it seriously and, based on Susan's confession and testimony, surprisingly ruled on my behalf. I was awarded $500,000 in the settlement. Yeah, I like that judge. When the final gavel clacked, and we were officially divorced and I was $500,000 richer thanks to her efforts, I took Angie, my attorney, out for drinks at the Silver Spar. I had continued to exercise and eat right and had cut out almost all alcohol. But on this night, I wanted to at least have a beer or two. My pony keg bureau was back down to 6-pack ABS. Yeah, I'd gotten back in shape during the whole mess. I knew I would have to be there for my kids, and I would be back on the market. I just hoped and prayed that I could find someone who wasn't as shallow and selfish as Susan. Angela Johnson is a gorgeous woman. Her dark chocolate skin looked delicious. It had been almost 7 months since I had last had sex with Susan, just before blindsiding her with the divorce papers. During that time, Angie and I had grown pretty close. We were more than just attorney-client. We had become friends. So, as friends, we went to the bar for a couple of beers. "So, what are your plans now, Jonathan?" Angie asked while we were swigging our beers. "Get back to work and raise my kids as well as possible. I found a smaller house with only 1 story and 4 bedrooms. It's a lot cheaper than that monster Susan made me buy about 3 years ago." I shrugged. "Are you all moved in yet?" she asked. "Yeah, moved in a couple of weeks ago and closed on the house. It's closer to work, and the kids love it," I smiled. "What about you? You took on my case knowing I might lose a lot, but you took it anyway." "Thanks for that," I clinked bottles with her. "Well, I've been divorced for about 4 years now since my ex got caught cheating on me." She must have seen the look of surprise on my face. "And why do you think I took your case with such a hefty discount?" "I don't like cheaters," I chuckled. "Good, because neither do I." I gave her my best smile. "Since we're paid up, do you mind if I fire you as a client?" she asked with a smile. Her question took me aback. "Why?" I asked. "Because I don't date clients," she shrugged, her smile growing. I smiled back. "Well then, consider me fired. Would you like to go to dinner?" "No, I want you to come to my place so I can cook you something," she said. "We've been dating now for 6 months, and I've never been happier." For a high-powered divorce attorney, Angie is not high maintenance, especially compared to Susan. She loves me, loves my kids, and loves me. She dotes on the children, and even though Susan is still their mom, they call Angie Mommy too, which we find adorable. Angie has moved in with us, and Susan joins us for dinner some nights when she takes the kids for the weekend. Angie and I fall into bed together and have sex with each other silly. It's a great life so far. As for the a-hole, he never recovered from what I did to him. He was left penniless and alone after all of his wife's insurance money went to paying his medical bills, court fees, and my alienation of affection lawsuit. Good riddance to him. Susan seems to be doing much better now. Since her hormones were really out of whack, at least according to her doctor, she's been taking supplements and seems to be on much more of an even keel. She has a steady job at an accounting firm in our town and is making some decent money. I've been promoted to supervisor of the diesel shop and now make as much for 40 hours as I used to for 60. I now have plenty of time to spend with my kids and with the new woman in my life. Susan will have to live with what she's done, and that's good enough for me. She blames herself for everything now, and I'm not even going to try to console her. She doesn't even date since she says she's still in love with me, but whatever. She'll have those regrets for the rest of her life, and part of me hopes she chokes on them. Am I still a little bitter? Yeah, I have to admit that I am. Luckily, Angie is here to help take my mind off what my ex put me through. Life is pretty damn good now. Story 2. Saturday morning. I woke up to the aroma of fresh coffee that wafted from the kitchen through the living room and into the bedroom. I reached out and turned my head toward the window, half covered by the curtains, with the sun already streaming through. I remembered that today was Kate and I's 5th wedding anniversary, and I'd prepared a gift for her a few days ago to present today. 10 years ago, I had met her at one of the university hangouts, and there had been an instant spark between us. We dated for 5 years, lived together, shared our joys and sorrows, then decided to legitimize our relationship and had a modest but very romantic wedding on the ocean. In the city, we lived in an apartment for a better and closer commute to work, and later we bought a house outside the city where we could spend the weekends in nature and clean air, away from the dust and hustle and bustle of the city. I got a job at a big company, in a position that required a lot of effort and time. I often worked late during the work week, but the weekends were always ours. Kate found her calling in cooking. She was a talented cook and always dreamed of having her own business. She started with small orders at home. She invited friends and acquaintances to try out new recipes and improve her skills. Her dishes were always great, and after a while, her client list grew considerably. She even started a social media page where she kept her cooking blog. Today, I decided to give her a new multi-purpose food processor. A couple of months ago, I happened to notice her leafing through ads with similar appliances. She certainly didn't have a lot of kitchen utensils, but such a thing would come in handy in her business. So the other day I bought it and stashed it in the garage until today. Determined to make the gift a surprise, I quietly got up at night and set it on the table in the kitchen, decorating it with a bow and a card with a romantic greeting. And so, rising from bed, I fumbled with my feet for slippers, threw on my robe, and wandered to the smell of freshly brewed coffee. No sooner had I entered the kitchen than Kate pounced on me with kisses and thanks for such a beautiful gift. Charles. You're wonderful. That's so sweet of you. It's just what I've been dreaming of. She hung around my neck. Kate, honey. I'm so happy you liked it. You know I'd do anything for your well-being. Darling, happy anniversary to you. I kissed her tenderly and hugged her. I love you, Charles. She said in return. You know, I came up with a new meat dish just for tonight. It's going to be delicious. I think the guests are going to love it. I had hoped, to be honest, that we would celebrate in a restaurant, just the two of us, without strangers. That's what we wanted to do before. Yes. But it's our anniversary, so I thought it would be appropriate to have a little party right here. It's so nice and quiet here. She went to the kitchen counter and started pouring cups of coffee. I always liked her assertiveness and initiative. But on this day, I really didn't want to see a lot of people in my house. I hoped that we could spend time enjoying romance as we did in the early years of our relationship when we were into all sorts of role-playing games. Her change of heart embarrassed me a little, but I didn't want to spoil her mood and agreed with her choice. And how many people did you invite? I sat down on a stool, leaning on the table. Not many, mostly our close friends and a couple of my regulars. She brought out cups and handed me one. Yeah, did you know the Thompsons are getting divorced? But I still talked them both into coming. She sat down at the table across from me. It's a shame. They were such a couple. They were so right for each other. What a fly that bit them. Did it? No. I didn't know that. Yeah. Chloe doesn't say anything, I just know they've been fighting lately. Well, that's their business. The important thing is that we're okay. Yeah, honey. We are. She took my hand, which was on the table, and stroked it gently. We spent the morning doing nothing much. After breakfast, we watched a love movie that was on the local channel. Then Kate decided to get busy making goodies for the party while I got a job setting up a table and benches in the yard where the event would be held. I also got a couple of speakers and a tape recorder so I could play music to accompany the party, and I also made extra room for smokers, of whom there weren't many among our friends, so the smoke wouldn't disturb the other guests at the table. The few hours of cooking flew by quickly. I even managed to help out a little in the kitchen when Kate needed extra hands. While the cooking was going on, she let me sample sauces and creams. I even had the honor of chopping onions for the sauce. She called me a great helper today. I was happy to help her with her idea, and by the time the guests arrived, we had everything ready. Oh, I think the first guests have arrived, Kate said, looking out the window with the curtain ajar, as she heard the hum of the car approaching from the street. She threw off her apron and went to greet them. Soon others joined in. The party turned out to be fun, light, and festive. There was not much alcohol, but it just allowed the guests to try more of the viands prepared by my wife. Everyone admired and praised her talent. Kate, your new dish is really wonderful. Chloe came over and was the first one to check it out. Thank you. It's a new dish. Don't ask for the recipe, I won't give it to you. Kate smiled. Meanwhile, I walked up to Kevin Thompson. I was surprised at the thought of his divorce from his wife. They had lived together for so many years, and now this. Hey, Kevin. How are you doing? I'm good. Can't complain. I hear you're getting a divorce. What happened? He took a few sips of champagne as if thinking of the best answer. We had a fight. We didn't see eye to eye. Chloe wants a divorce. I didn't ask him much, noticing that he didn't want to talk about it. Something really awful must have happened if they made that decision. I invited him into the house to help me get a couple more bottles of wine for the table from the basement. When we got downstairs, he appraised our huge cellar, which held several dozen bottles of wine, and some of them were already quite old and expensive. My phone rang unexpectedly. I picked it up, but the signal wasn't coming through well, and I, after showing Kevin what to get, walked out of the basement to answer it. My supervisor called. He first of all congratulated me, but then informed me that there was an important meeting on Monday morning and there was no way I could miss it. While I was on the phone, a slow musical tempo could be heard outside. When I came out, I noticed several couples had decided to dance. Among them, I noticed Kate dancing with Kevin, who had already had time to handle his wine. I didn't dare disturb them and took a seat on a bench not far from them. But after a while of watching, I noticed that Kate was somehow giving herself too much to this dance. I saw him put his arm around her waist and she put her head on his shoulder. This picture made me feel uncomfortable. I even flashed the thought of walking over and correcting them. But Kate noticed my jealous look, pulled away from him a little, and smiled at me, hinting that all was well. Charles, let's go and dance. Chloe came up to me. It's such a beautiful evening, and you're sitting there sad. Let's go. But I did not want to. When I refused her invitation, she left. I took out my phone to see what time it was and noticed that the charge was almost at 0, so I decided to go inside to put it on charge. Rummaging through the desk drawer in the hallway, I couldn't find the charger. After standing for a while, I remembered that the last time I used it was in the bedroom. Going into the room, I found it there on the nightstand next to the bed. As I plugged in the wire, I noticed that Kate's laptop was open on the second nightstand, and her account was unclosed. Apparently, she was so engrossed in her cooking that she had completely forgotten about it. Although I wasn't a fan of looking at other people's personal pages, a picture of her meat dish from today that she must have posted from her phone while she was cooking caught my attention. I sat down and started leafing through the feed. There was nothing of interest there for me personally, and I was about to close my laptop when I noticed the messenger open, and one of the chats was with Kevin. A few awkward thoughts immediately flashed through my head. I clicked on the chat and a correspondence opened up. As I began to read, each line left me more and more amazed. It turned out that Kate was secretly having an affair with Kevin. The words in the correspondence confirmed it. The phrases "sweetheart," "Charles won't find out," "I feel so good with you," and a few others like that were strongly imprinted on my mind. It was like an electric shock went through me. I couldn't understand the reason for it. But the revealed truth filled me with anger with every word from the chat room. I couldn't stand it and slammed the laptop with force. I ran out of the bedroom like scalded. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a full glass of wine. With each sip I realized that my family idol was now ruined. I couldn't forgive Kate and Kevin for this. My first urge was to go to them and find out on the spot, but that seemed too easy for me. Now I understood why Kevin and Chloe were getting a divorce. Apparently, she found out about his cheating, but then why is she keeping quiet about it? She is very friendly with Kate. Or maybe she doesn't know with whom? While these frantic thoughts were swirling around in my head, Kate walked into the kitchen. "Charles, I've been looking for you. Where have you been? The guests are waiting for us. Why would they be bored without me?" I mumbled. Kate noticed the glass in my hands and the bottle next to it. She looked at me critically, joking that drinking alone was bad for me. As she spoke, I mentally imagined shoving the bottle into her mouth and making her drink it all down, and then... "Charles." My wife distracted me from my thoughts. "Are you listening to me? Let's go." But I was so emotionally invested in my fantasy that when she called out to me, my fingers clenched tightly and I crushed the glass in my hand, hurting my palm. "Oh, dear. Charles?" Kate grabbed a towel and began to put it on the wound. But I didn't want her to touch me, so I yanked my hand away hard. "Let me go. I'll do it." "It's okay," I grumbled. Kate only looked at me in surprise, not understanding why my mood had changed. She had no idea that by pure coincidence I already knew everything. I went to the bathroom to rinse the wound and look in the medicine cabinet for something to bandage my arm with, leaving her in the kitchen. As I rinsed the wound and the blood dripped onto the wash basin, a plan for revenge was brewing in my head. I had always been very jealous, and Kate was well aware of that, and she tried to act like it. But now my anger was even greater than if she'd just come and told me she wanted to leave me for someone else. She was doing it behind my back, and that hurt my honor and pride. I soon went out again to the guests. Kate was chatting with the girls, discussing her recipes. I saw Kevin to the side. He was smoking and didn't see me approach him. "So what do you think you'll do after the divorce?" I asked him. "I haven't thought about it. But someday I will. Maybe I'll find somebody. So many years have gone down the drain. At least I don't have kids. I see you're not too worried about it. It's like you wanted to. Well, I'm not gonna cry like a sissy, if that's what you mean." No, you're not. I just thought we'd been friends for so many years, but we don't see each other very often. I want to invite you over for dinner tomorrow night. Kate's up to something new again, and we can play chess like we used to." "What?" "It's not a bad idea. What time should I come over?" "Don't bother. I'll be in town tomorrow morning, so I'll pick you up. It's on my way." We agreed that I would pick him up right around the corner from his house. In the morning I stopped by the apartment and logged into my office account from my computer. Then I stopped at a couple more places and then picked up Kevin at the agreed meeting place. Kate stayed at the country house the whole time and was conjuring something in the kitchen as usual. When we arrived, Kevin's appearance came as a surprise to her, but she welcomed the guest. We waited for Kate to finish cooking, and I invited Kevin to join us for dinner. He gladly agreed, and while my wife set the table and Kevin took a seat at the table, I went down to the basement to get a bottle of wine to go with the meal. I chose one of the ones we had kept for several years. "Oh, Charles. Is that the bottle you decided to get? What's the occasion?" "It's not even a holiday." Kate looked at the bottle with wonder. "Have you even opened it yet?" "I've wanted to try it for a long time. Today was just the right mood for it. Couldn't help myself. Well, let's get to the table. When everyone was seated, I began to pour the wine into glasses. A pleasant aroma wafted over the table. Kevin, who liked to indulge in such drinks, proclaimed a toast. "Well, here's to friendship," he said, and we raised our glasses. My phone rang at that moment. "I'm sorry." I apologized when I got the phone. "It's work, I have to take this." I put my glass down and walked out of the kitchen into the hallway. Kate and Kevin weren't waiting for me, since the toast had already been said and they decided to savor the taste of the liquor. I could hear them whispering and sipping their wine. I was gone from the kitchen for a few minutes. When I returned, I saw that Kevin and Kate were still sitting in their seats, their heads resting on the table and their hands still holding the stem of their glasses. Both of their eyes were open but not moving. I walked over to Kevin first and put my fingers to his neck, probing for a pulse. There was no pulse. Then I did the same with Kate. After making sure they were no longer breathing, I carried their bodies into the bedroom, undressed them, and placed them on the bed. Putting on my gloves, I placed their glasses, bottle, and dish beside them on the bedside tables. Everything looked like they were on a love date. In the kitchen, I carefully cleaned up everything, especially the third serving. When it was all done, I shut the door without locking it and left for town. From the apartment, I continued to scour my office account as if I'd been sitting at home working all day. In my hand, I nervously crumpled a package of poison.